Course. Let's rock and roll then. Yeah, my original background is in sales and marketing. I lived and worked in a couple of countries. Originally, I'm a Hungarian, born in Romania. My family moved to Hungary when I was a kid. Lived there for a while. I moved to the capital. Went to college over there, and back in 2015, 15, yeah, it was 2015, like, geez, 10 years ago, we decided with my girlfriend at the time, who since then became my wife, that we will put our headquarters into a different country, and at that time that was Dublin, in Ireland, where we lived for a couple of years, like good 3 years, and after that we did another hop across the big pond and then moved to the west coast, up north to the Pacific Northwest. We are currently based in the greater Seattle area, and these moves were preliminary fueled by some sort of career opportunity. We moved to Ireland because my wife had a career opportunity over there, and there I tried to find a job, and I couldn't. Before that, I was working in my original trade, which is sales and marketing. I was leading sales teams. I was leading operational teams. And when we moved to Ireland, I could not find a job. So one day I thought that, you know what, anybody can be a recruiter. And that is the curse and the beauty of the recruiting industry, is that you do not need to go to a recruiting academy or anything like that to become a recruiter or work in talent acquisition. Agencies are usually hiring entry level folks and teaching them the craft, or sometimes they don't, but those are different type of employers. And when I landed in this new job, after not being able to find a job, I was like, okay, I'll just apply to every recruiting job because it felt somewhat similar to sales, right? Like, you are not selling a product, you are selling a role, a job opportunity, and you're also sort of quote unquote selling a candidate to an employer as well. Doing this profession for more than a decade now, I I quickly realized that it's not sales. It is, but it's not sales. Because while we are saying that, oh, you're like selling the dream, selling the opportunity, selling the job, in reality, the purchasing decision, if we want to call it like that, is way different in case of a job than it is in case of buying a SaaS product, or your next vacuum cleaner or car or anything like that, because the impact of that decision is way bigger, right? Like, maybe you need to relocate to a different country. It also impacts what you do for anywhere from 6 to 8 hours to 8, 10, 12 hours a day, depending on how workaholic you are, right? And what you spend that time with is a big and impactful decision. Maybe you don't need to move to a different country, you just need to move to a different city. But how does that impact your family? How does it impact your kids, if you have any, like, social network, schools, and all those things? So I quickly realized that this profession of recruiting is more than just sales. And while I was doing that, I also realized that at the same time, it is a lot of overlap with the classical sales operations roles, and the people industry, at least where I was working on it, was lagging a little bit behind that. So trying to find ways to do recruiting more smoothly, more data drivenly, and with better operational excellence, basically led me to quite a few opportunities, because I was not just doing it, I was also trying to teach others as well. Because right now, if you go up on, like, I don't know, Google, we can actually try to do this live. What could possibly go wrong? If I type in Google right now, I won't share my screen because probably it won't work. But just go up on Google and try to type in "recruiters are space." The first recommendation that I get is "recruiters are not your friends."
It's true. Are key to gender solution.
Right.
That's
So,
very contradictory, though.
but one thing that I wanted to highlight about this is that unfortunately, because it's so easy to get into recruiting, not every recruiter is a great recruiter. And I worked for this small book company called Amazon for a while, where we were hiring like crazy. Like the numbers were in the tens of thousands, right? Like when I joined Amazon, they were like 86,000 people. When I left, they were like, I think, 1.5 or 1.6 million or something like that. So crazy, crazy growth velocity. And they needed a lot of recruiters to handle that growth. So not every recruiter was necessarily excellent at their craft, let's phrase it that way. So a lot of Amazon recruiters had like bad reputation, right? Like you said, like, hey, you're a recruiter at Amazon, and candidates were like, oh, go away. Like recruiters at Amazon
Mm-hmm.
are crap. Like I've been thrown so much shade and badness at me just because where I work, that I decided to try to, to change that. So that's why I also started to educate people on how to do recruiting well, and that led to an opportunity for me to move to the United States and create continuous development programs for recruiters at Amazon, which led to me working in some development organizations where we were experimenting with new ways of doing recruiting and scaling. And one thing led to the other. And I switched some jobs, and I became one of the founding members of the AWS Talent Intelligence group, which was not just teaching recruiters how to be, for example, data driven, but was also going after the data, figuring out what markets to hire from, in what cadence, where does the talent sit, from where should we import talent versus where should we go and establish maybe some sort of presence, create an office or anything like that. So I was doing that for a while. I had a very, very good time at Amazon. I know it's trendy to throw dirt at Amazon, and a lot of things are messed up. Not everything is perfect. It's actually quite the opposite. But reality is somewhere in between. Is not as good as some people think, and not as bad as some others assume. So I had a very, very good ride. But after more than 6 years, one day, Jeff came back from space in a cowboy hat and at an all hands thanked everyone for paying for it. Not verbatim, but sort of that was the feeling. And I was like, you know what, guys, it's time to leave. So that's when I decided to create a talent foundation where I put all these things together, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
I say that I'm fixing hiring, right? Like if you look at any hiring process, I can guarantee you that there are room for opportunities, right? And not having your hiring engine locked down and always needing to restart and re-figure out how you grow will hinder your growth, right? Like if you are a startup, let's say you are a Series A startup, you prove that your MVP works, you might have even find some sort of product market fit, and maybe you got some investor throwing a few $100,000 or a few $1 million at you and say, go and build a company. How do you do that, right? How do you suddenly 2x, 3x, 5x your headcount? Where do you do that? How do you hire? What sort of work culture do you start to build up? Are you remote? Are you not remote? Are you remote but within a same time zone? How do you approach candidates, right? All those things need to be figured out. And a lot of times what I see at early stage companies is that the founders are brilliant at building that product, right? Like they are very, very uh, neck deep basically in the product space and in the development space of creating the thing that they want to create. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are good at also creating companies, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they are good at finding talent that they need. That doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to assess that talent. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can build diverse pipelines that are also inclusive for different type of talent coming from different type of backgrounds. So those are the things that I help with what I call talent enablement. And I think this is something that everybody can apply to themselves, right? When we talk about enablement, because what is enablement? Enablement, in my opinion, has three pillars: information, tooling, and process, right? And in this particular case of talent acquisition and recruiting, information can be twofold. Information can be data of, for example, I want to hire 10 software engineers that work in this time zone, and this is my budget for these 10 hires. Where should I go? Where should I target? Where should I send outreach messages? Where should I advertise my roles? So that is information as like market data, but also information as knowledge of like, how do I do this, right? Like how do I write better job descriptions? How do I write better Boolean scripts to go and find my candidates? How do I define leveling? How do I define how do I interview? What questions do I ask? How do I ensure that the questions that I ask are fair and actually aligning to the level that I need to hire from, right? Like, do I come up with new questions every time, or I use a question bank, right? So it's knowledge of how to do things and information about the market. But there is also in that enablement, there is process, right? Of like, how do I do things? Sometimes it is just very, very, simple things that can make an employer feel better or sound better when they care. They care about the process and they care about the candidates. Like, do you have your process set up in a way that you follow up with everybody who applied? But what happens if these days you put up a job application and you can have hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants in a matter of hours? How do you manage that? How do you manage that in a way that you're also compliant, right? Like you can go like, oh, I'll just throw it to ChatGPT and happy days. I'm like, cool, try and do that in the EU, right? With the EU Act, the AI Act coming in, or try to do that in New York, for example, where it's mandatory to disclose AI usage in your process, or try to do that and explain it when you get an audit, right? And you need to explain how are you an equal opportunity employer when you don't know how did your AI rank your candidates and why, right? So the way how you do recruiting can be improved in a lot of ways, but also there are a lot of risk factors in there that you don't even think so, but it can burn you. So when you think about enablement, you gotta think about those things and also enable yourself, right? Like sit down and think about it, right? Like we know that it's hard, especially in the, well, not the startup space, any space. When you're building, when you're running with 100 miles per hour, you gotta build a plane mid-flight, right? Like you cannot sit down and like, okay, we do nothing right now, we just think about this. But to some extent, you gotta find time for that, right? Because if you don't put down the foundations correctly, if you don't know where to look, how to look, and how to process, you'll get lost, right? Like you can go out and post a job advert like, oh, I'm hiring a co-founding product engineer or whatever, a CPO or a CTO. Where do you post that? Are you did you sit down and create an ideal candidate profile, an ideal candidate persona? If you can do it in sales, if you can do ICP and BPs in sales and create economic value propositions for your sales pipeline for selling your product, you got to think the same way about your recruiting, right? Like how does my perfect candidate look like? What language do they use? What should I put in my job advertisement? Where should I post that? How should I market it? How should I do active outreach? To whom? How does the perfect candidate look like? What's the selling point for them? Because you can say like, oh, come and join ABC company, we are changing the world. Sure you are, of course. The other 10,000 companies who say the same also are. So what is your value proposition? What are you actually promising to this candidate? Why should you come over here? How should you sound different? We say like, oh, we want energetic candidate who is a self-starter, blah, 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 blah. That's what I hear when I read those job descriptions, right? You probably went on and copied a job description from your previous employer, or you went up on like Google's or Amazon career site and saw something similar to what you're hiring, copy pasted, and hoped it works for you. Guess what? Probably doesn't. But by the time you realize that, you're already feeling the pain and you're reactive and you're behind. Let's say you are hiring a go-to-market person, right? That go-to-market person owns how much sales delivery, how much sales pipeline they own, $1 million. So if you have a go-to-market engineer or a go-to-market person who runs your sales and they need to generate a pipeline of $1 million, every month that they are not in the job, you're losing 1 million divided by 12, which is what, $82,000, $83,000, something like that. By the time you realize that, like, oh gosh, my job description is not speaking to the go-to-market person that I need to hire. The folks who come through the interview have no clue, or they are, VP of sales who don't want to get their like hands dirty. So like, why the heck are they even showing up in your pipeline? Well, guess what? You didn't rule them out, or you targeted your job advertisement and your outreach to the wrong place because you had no clue about what you're hiring.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. or Mrs. hiring manager, right? So these can become very, very, very costly mistakes because pipelines are not like engines that you just turn on and suddenly they go. And that's it. It's like, oh, yesterday I didn't do recruiting. Tomorrow I'll do so. Everything will be fine because in 2 days I'll have 100 candidates. It's like, it's not like that, right? Like having the
Mm-hmm.
right volume of candidates, having the candidates who are qualified, engaged, and also interested in your job, that just takes time, right? So, being able to sit down and think through actually, okay, what am I looking for? Where do they sit? How do they look like in reality? Where do they hang out? Where are they around the world? Right? Like maybe you want to hire the unicorn and in New York, but guess what? Probably it costs more than the budget that you have. So what else could you do, right? Like, okay, how do I hire remotely? You can go down and hire in Brazil, Argentina, or basically anywhere in Latin America due to the overlap with the US working hours. Or if you're in Europe, right? Like maybe you want to hire somebody in like London or Berlin or Paris or anything like that, and turns out it's crazy expensive. What
Yeah.
else could you do? Maybe you can go towards Eastern Europe, right? Like you can go towards Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Ukraine, like you name it, right? Or maybe you can go down south. You can go down to and look around in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. And also every other country has some like small bubbles, right? Like it's all about the talent density. Um, that's another question that you need to think about is talent density. You wanna hire 10 people today, but how much do you want to hire 6 months from now? Will those people exist where you're actually looking right now, right? Like where you are physically building your workforce? Can you support that growth on the long term, right? Like, are there enough people moving over here? If you start to hire maybe not just one, not just 10, but maybe thousands of engineers or product designers or customer support people, or put in your preferred job description that you're hiring for, you start to hire those in the thousands or maybe just in the hundreds. Like, can you support that pipeline, right? Like, or
But
if you start.
please just let's say about that. How do you, because strategy and goal setting is so important and everybody knows that. How do you manage to, because startups who have very small resources and a lot of things to do, how do you get them to do this strategic thinking about hires? How do you how do you make them sit down and really think about it? Because it's so hard to think, okay, to see what you're doing right now and think that you might be managing 1,000 people in 5, 10 years. So how do you help startup and founders to build this and to build this strategic thinking with them?
Um, this won't sound the friendliest, but pain. Pain is the easiest seller, right? Because you can come in and say how much better will things be if you start doing this. But you as a founder, especially as an early stage founder, an early stage entrepreneur, you gotta wear dozens of hats, right? Like one day or 1 hour you are the product person, the next time you are digging into like sales pipelines, the next hour you are looking at contracts, legal stuff, the next hour you are working on the engineering stuff, the next hour you are customer support, like you name it, right? Like you gotta
Yes.
switch your hats. And you have capacity to wear like 4 hats maybe, but there are like 10 hats available. So it comes down in the early stages of like, so what are you taking away from, right? Like if I only have like 4 credits to
Mm-hmm.
spend, activity credits, where are you taking that away from? What are you not doing when you're doing like recruiting? And selling it that way, it's hard because nobody has time for it. And especially in the early stages, this is not necessarily a problem, right? Like if it's a company below like 10 people, you hire from your network. You hire people that you know, or you group up with people that you know from the accelerator, from the incubator, from the
Mm-hmm.
VC, the networking hour that you met with from school, from previous jobs. Like it's your immediate network that you hire from. When you are around like 50 to 100, maybe even like 200 people, if you don't have aggressive growth targets, right? Like if you're not like, I know, Lovable, for example, who just got like $200 million at the 1.3, 2 billion valuation or something like that, like big website builder and product builder AI agent company. They were around like 50 people, or something like that. And now they suddenly have like 50 jobs open, right? Filling those only with referrals and the network that you know, it's hard. That's where you start to reach your limits. So the way you get there to think about this strategically is that this problem becomes relevant, right? Like you have no
It's
other
true. Yeah.
option. Hey, you had an investment, or hey, you got to build that MVP. You want to go to market, but you got to build that MVP. You need to have an engineer, for example, because you're building an online product, or you need to have some mechanical engineer because you're building something that it's more like tactile. Maybe you're in R&D. Like you need the person to do the job that you cannot because you need to scale.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that's when you are forced to think about these things. And first time you go in and you do it with common sense. Hopefully, you have that, right? Unfortunately, common sense is not that common sometimes. But if you're an entrepreneur, probably you have some sort of system thinking capabilities, first principles thinking. You can break problems down, and you can find solutions. Like, yeah, you
Mm.
post, you write a good job advert, you activate your network, you find people. But after a while, that's just not enough, right? And that's
And
where you ask yourself the question of like, okay, what else can I do? And that's where
yeah,
I go
and
in.
let's go into your process. So I was scrolling your website and you speak a lot of design thinking, design hiring, and I'm very curious. And you speak also a lot of data-driven resilience. So I'm very interested in how do you use this data, but also what data do you use in the hiring process specifically? And secondly, what concepts of design thinking you use for hiring, and why do you relate to the concept of design thinking?
uh, where should I start? Well, the design thinking relates to working backwards from either the user or the candidate, or whatever label we are putting on it. when we put design thinking into the recruiting process, when we are creating a recruitment process where we use design thinking, we put the human in the middle. And in this case, human can be two-part, right? Like there is the human who is the hiring manager, there is the
Yes,
human that is the organization that is hiring, and there is the human who is
that
the
is the
candidate,
candidate.
right? And
Yeah.
we need to think about candidate experience, right? Because maybe you don't want to get up on like Reddit or Twitter or X or whatever they call it these days and become a trending post about a horror recruiting experience that you had as a candidate, right? But if you don't think about that, if you don't apply design thinking and put yourself into the shoes of the candidate themselves and the hiring manager themselves, understand their pain, understand their needs, and be able to design a system and a process that suits and serves them, you'll probably have some pain points in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to very, very, very simple things. If you are a candidate and you look at a job description, well, first you want to understand what is this job, right? What's the job that you need to do, and how does a good candidate look like? Look at the majority of the job descriptions out there right now. They start with like, oh, we are this amazing company. We are doing this amazing things. Probably, assuming so. Who knows? Everybody promises amazing stuff in their job descriptions, right?
Always.
But none of them, oh, we want somebody who has X years of experience doing A, B, and C and whatever college degree. This job description was everything but not about the candidate, right? It was me, 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 me,
Mm-hmm.
me,
Yes.
the employer. And look, does that work? It does. Of course it does. If the market is like that, right? Like there are employer and sometimes candidate driven markets, right? And unfortunately, we are in the days where mass layoffs are happening week by week, where thousands of people are getting laid off just by an email at 4 a.m. in the morning. And it's an employer driven market where the employer can do anything, right? They're like, oh, we are hiring, and everybody falls over themselves to be able to apply. Uh, but it wasn't like that all the time, right? Just think back a few years, think back to COVID, think back before that, when engineering hiring craze was going on. Like if you just smelled like an engineer, you got the job offer for plus $100,000 probably. Over there at that time, it was a candidate-driven market. So every
Mm-hmm.
employer was, offering all the nice things to candidates, doing everything to get those candidates in and please them. Nowadays, it's slightly different market in some parts of the world. So some employers get away with suboptimal practices. Let's phrase it that way. But
Yes.
um, no, your think about your job description. If in sales you answer the what's in it for me for buying your product, why don't you answer that in your job description, right? So think about those things when you're hiring. Like your job description should not speak about your needs. They back backtrack on that. They should speak about your needs, but they should be phrased up in a way that the candidate can see themselves in that, and they can also see what's in it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you come over here to work on this amazing product launch, whatever. Yeah, cool. That's good for you, company, but what's in it for me as an employee over there? And it's very easy to fix that. Well, what will you learn? What will you grow while you're doing that job? What will you accomplish while you're doing that job? What will happen with the person doing that job? Answer those
Mm-hmm.
in your job descriptions. That's how you have design thinking, human-centered design thinking over here. And that's just the job description, right? Think about process. You see these horror stories. Oh, I applied to 200 jobs and I heard back from two. Do you reply to your job applicants? Does your job application process or your job description set expectations about what to expect, when, and how many interview steps, how fast will you reply? Will you tell me that you reply within 48 hours? why don't you reply within 48 hours, right? So two things, like have your process very, very well mapped out and communicated to the people who are reading it, right? So and also reply to your people. I don't care if you had 1,000 applicants, you can still send a mass mail, right? Like get it
Yeah.
together. Like that's what I tell people. Oh, there are so many people. Like, yeah, but this is part of the job to process that, right?
I've been
So,
in the process of looking for a job in this year, and I was very touched when they took the time to say thank you for your interest in your
right.
company. And of course, it doesn't change anything that you're if you will have an interview or not. But afterwards, is that I see jobs, I'll be more interested in this company, of course.
Yeah. All
And
right. So have those,
well,
communicate those things. And a lot of people don't.
exactly. Some people forget about the human side, and I would like to speak about this human-centered approach that you speak of, and we spoke yesterday, and mix that with the centering equity too in the hiring process. And I would like to know, in practical terms, in practice, how does inclusive hiring, how does it look like, and how do you really respect that? And or differently put, how do you help startups, if we really focus on startups, that say, oh, we are innovative, oh, we are for diversity, we are for equity, and how does that actually translate in the hiring process? How do you make sure that, or would you have any tip to
I'll
give
be
to startup?
I'll be
Yes.
blunt. If when you're interviewing candidates and every candidate that you interview looks like you, feels like you, speaks like you, probably you don't have a diverse pipeline. If you look at your job description and the only people who fit that description verbatim are middle-aged white dudes, probably you don't, and nothing against middle-aged white dudes. I'm also middle-aged white dude.
We
So,
understand that.
but think about the way that you, from a marketing standpoint, what words do you use? To whom do
Hmm.
you target this, right? And if you think about diversity and equity that can in a pipeline that can only be reached by active things that you perform. Like you cannot expect a diverse pipeline if you don't make sure that you actively market your job in places where the diverse candidates can see it as well. Or if you don't do outreach in a way that you make sure that your pipeline actually represents the population that is available for it. Now,
Hmm.
where you do this and how you do this, I'll be honest, these days it's a bit trickier. If you turn on the news and you listen to what does, how should I phrase this nicely without getting political. If you look at the political news, I actually say this. I won't say anything. I suggest everybody to go and run a Google search and, for example, see how is diverse hiring phrased up, for example, these days in the United States, if you're
Hmm.
hiring over here versus if you're hiring somewhere else around the globe. So how do you do that, and what are the legal consequences of doing something depending on where you are in the world might differ. So I always say your mileage might vary, but small things like have your job advertised in various places, not just your LinkedIn profile, so only your bubble sees it. Your like network bubble. There
Hmm.
are a bunch of international job boards out there, right? Like you can be way more inclusive and you can have a way more diverse pipeline if you look outside of the common places, right? Like if you don't just advertise on whatever Indeed or your own job site and hope that somebody finds it, right? Like you can go out and advertise that job on websites that target some sort of population, remote folks or people who are in some parts of the world, like geographically, right? Like if you are,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, if you are hiring in GMT and GMT plus 3 time zones, like, or plus two, like what's that from Dublin, UK, Ireland region up to Eastern Europe, Turkey maybe. Um, why not advertise those jobs on like African job boards if you're hiring remotely, right? Like maybe you can advertise those in just remote job boards, but in that case, you're missing like geographical targeting, right? Or you can do partnerships with universities and university hiring, right? And go and make sure that your job boards is in front of early career talent as well, not just like people who are like doing this for 10 or 15 years. Think about cross-functional skills, right? Like think about military, right? Like people go and serve for years, sometimes decades in the military in some sort of armed forces, and after that they are trying to join the everyday workforce, and it's hard because what they did and how they operated and what work they performed in the military doesn't necessarily transform verbatim to the for-profit corporate world out there. But there are ways to find out how. Like if you just ask somebody like what sort of position you worked in, at what sort of armed forces, and what assigned job code you had, like how does that translate to everyday job opportunities, right? Like you can go and understand those. You can
And
hire a bunch of veterans who are very,
I
very
think,
hard workers.
yeah, nowadays the fact that you receive 100 and 200 of candidates per hires must make this very hard to see the transferable skills and to see the potential. Because as we said earlier, to filter all the candidates, it gets very hard. Do you have a tip for that? Because I see a
Um,
lot of, I think in 2025, we see a lot of transferable skills and people changing careers and changing fields too.
I
But it
think,
comes also with the challenge, please.
yeah, assessments. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you, I think this thing of like, oh, you read between the lines of a resume, that is the warm bed for bias, right? Like if, oh, I read, so humans are better reviewers because they read through the lines in a resume and they give opportunities based on potential. I think that's BS. I want to call it out for what it is, right? Like nobody hires for potential in real life. Does it occasionally does it happen of like, oh, I found somebody, hire them an assistant and train them for years because they had the potential? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Does it happen occasionally? Of course. I need to hire 100 people. I need to hire 50 people. I need to hire 5 people to start tomorrow and do this job. Do I have time for potential? Not really,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, I'm hiring this go-to-market person. I need somebody to generate a sales pipeline the next month that they got hired. Do I have time for potential over there? I don't. I really, really, really don't, right? So that is the tough reality of stuff. But if you don't want to burn yourself with like maybe potential, maybe yes, maybe no. And also, you don't want to burn yourself by giving opportunities for people who maybe shouldn't really, but you don't want to rule out them. You need to do assessments. I
Mm-hmm.
say the best way to do this is one, review the profile, start early on and be very, very clear about how does the perfect profile look like, right? So when you see it, you know it. You don't make decisions on your candidate pipeline on the fly of like, oh, do I like this? Don't I like this? No, you're doing it wrong. Before you start hiring, you define what you're looking for and how does that person look like, what experience they have, what do they need to show, where do they need to be physically, what is their expectations on compensation and work arrangements, workplace, all those things. And when you are reviewing the candidates, you're doing yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You're not bringing in thoughts and opinions into your process
Mm-hmm.
because what you are hiring for is clearly defined. So managing your pipeline after that becomes faster because you can rule out clearly the people who are not suitable. But after that, you should do as much as possible to assess as many candidates as possible. So when you're reviewing a person while they are like obvious non-fits, right? Like, for example, I need somebody who did this job for at least a year or two. So the people who have less than 1 year experience, never worked in this environment, could they be brilliant? Yeah, of course. But if you have time to grow them, of course, go through and assess all those as well. But if you know that you need somebody who hits the ground running the next week, you rule out the people who obviously don't have the years of experience or the domain expertise that you are looking for, and you don't have time to teach it. But after that, you're looking for why yes and not why not, right? Like
I
if
get it.
a candidate fits 5 out of 10, that's a reason to assess them versus saying like, oh, they only meet five and they don't meet those like five other needs that we have, versus like, oh, they meet more than or at least 50% of our needs. And if we have an assessment that actually correlates and you don't need to participate in it, then you can send this out to as many people as possible, right? Like you can create an assessment that mimics the actual work, the actual environment,
Mm-hmm.
and the problems that these people need to solve. You can also create an assessment that measures the skills that you actually need. That's why it's really, really important to think about the job that needs to be taken care of and the person who's taking care of that job. So what skills do they need? What signs do they need to show? And you create an assessment that measures that and actually measures that there is correlation and causation, not just correlation, right? Like
Yes.
there needs to be both in there. um and this assessment should be like async, right? Like this is something that the person should be able to do on their own time. Like there are a lot of like one-way interview methods. Me personally, I hate them. I think they are very inhuman, right? To send a link to somebody to speak into a camera and answer two questions in a one-way video interview. I'm really, really not a fan of them, and I don't think that they are a good candidate experience. But if that's the only way to do it, then that's the only way to do it sometimes, right? Like
Yes.
you need to find a tool for the problem that you need to solve, but have some sort of, is it a coding assessment? Is it a, you're hiring customer support people, like get somebody to do a reach out to somebody, find 5 profiles for your product and write messages, right? And see if they can
Mm-hmm.
actually do that. Or if it's a customer support person, like give them an actual problem that you actually have with your customers and see how they would solve it. If it is a chief of staff, executive assistant, whatever, like give them a project type of problem that they would need to solve. Like
Mm-hmm.
give, create an assessment that measures the skills that you need to have in that job, and it's asynchronous. So if you had 1,000 candidates hopping in, no problem. You'll assess all the 1,000 because it doesn't take up resource from your end. And the people who passed, now that's when you start to interview, right? So have an assessment. And even when you move to the interview part, ask questions that are related to the job and measure stuff, right? Like measure the things
Yes.
that need to be met. If you need X skills, like you say like, oh, I need somebody who practice some sort of tool or skill for like 3 years. Cool. I did it. Does it mean that I can actually use that tool? Does it mean that I actually have that skill? Who knows? Maybe yes, maybe no. But you need to mimic real world situations and put the person in it and see how they act in an assessment process. And in the interview process, in the face-to-face interviews, like, you can either go and do another type of assessment or a more harder live in-person assessment, or you can also, ask questions, behavioral type of questions. You either believe in them or not. I truly believe that previous behavior forecasts future behavior pretty well. So, you can tell me about the time when XYZ happened with you. How did you reacted? What did you do in that situation? So
Mhm.
you see how does the person actually act in the work situations. And after that, post hiring, I think it's very, very important to understand how does onboarding look like, right? Like, to know how does a 30, 60, 90-day window look like post hiring. What is the expectation from you? What support are you giving the person? How do you know that the person is onboarding and ramping in time? And
Mhm.
if they are not, what are you doing? Because it's equally as important to hire fast and fire fast. However hard it is,
That's very interesting.
however painful it is, keeping somebody around and paying somebody around that is not suitable for the job, and they won't grow into a job, then, well,
And
you're
you're
losing.
losing time to get a new candidate that would actually do better, right?
And I've
Well,
learned
that's
so much from you, Adam, by the way. I as you were talking through the last process, about how you really want to take time to do the job description and understand, I would love to highlight, not to toot 360's own horn, but to really highlight the learning that we took from you. So Klausi, this is personal because you were the subject of this. Um,
exactly. I went through this process.
Adam, I don't know if you saw the final version of the candidate packet that I sent out when I was hiring for the executive assistant and project management role. But Klausi took the assessment that I was inspired by the meetings we had together and went through it. So I don't know, Klausi, how was that? How was the process for you? Because we
Thank you.
talked a little bit about it, but I now's
Yes.
a good time to say it.
Actually, I wanted to say my point of view about this assessment, okay? Because when I was looking for a job, I saw so many job descriptions that all looked about the same. You know, when you're looking project management or this and that, or anyhow, when I got the assessment first, I'm somebody that loves processes, and when I saw the assessment, I thought, hey, I had the chance to truly show what I can do that maybe my curriculum couldn't say or couldn't show. And I think also when you're looking for different types of job, one thing that might be scary is, am I going to like it? Am I going to be comfortable? What is going to be asked from me? And when you receive this assessment, which must be close to reality, as a candidate, you can picture yourself better into what is it going to be in reality, because you receive the job description
What did I
sometimes
make
with
you
so many
do?
tasks.
What did I make you
Yes.
do, Klausi?
So you made me do it was, how do you speak, it was recording messages that as an assistant, executive assistant, I would have to say in French, no, sorry, in English and in Portuguese. I had also to do problem solving in a situation that Chandler would be stuck without Wi-Fi in an airport for a very important meeting. How would I have to deal with that situation? And written tests or like about emails and project management and scheduling, which is actually everything about executive assistant. So
One,
yes,
one,
in
one
my
last
point of view, this was very appreciated.
one last thing to put in here. You asked process wise and design thinking and all that. Um, and metrics to use to be data driven, and a lot of times when we think about metrics, we think about numbers. And what I hate about numbers is that they can lie. My
Mm-hmm.
previous life is in marketing, and my current life is in, a lot of it is in research, in workforce research and talent intelligence research, right? And you can take the same sample data or the same data pool, and depending on what question you ask and how you ask it and how you package the responses, sometimes the same amount of data can be interpreted in A way or B way, right? Like depends on what you want to present. Sometimes it's more straightforward, right? Like sometimes it's obvious that you cannot repackage that and tell a different story. But that's my problem with like pure numbers. When you say like, oh, I don't know, I had 200 candidates for this job, or like, oh, I had 50 candidates, or like, oh, I have 1,000 responding, and you get kind of like stuck on the number, and it's like, oh, if you need to hire more, I just need to have more, and that's the biggest mistake that you can do. Like if you say like, oh, I need to hire 10 people, so far I hired two and I processed like 500. That means that like, oh, my goal is to, instead of this, like process another, like if I needed 500 for two people, I need another eight. That is like what, another 2,000 people that I need to go through. And that's the goal of my outreach pipeline. And it's wrong because you're focusing on numbers. Instead, you should focus on efficiency. You should focus on pasture race, like just as you do in like sales and go to market. Like, okay, how many people hit the apply button on my job? How many people, what is the ratio of people who actually went through the application? Out of the people who applied, what's the percentage of people who went through the first filtering option? Like, what's the percentage of people who completed my assessment? What's the percentage of completion to passing? Like, look at percentages, right? Because maybe instead of going through and working through another like 2,000 people to hire another 8 candidates by the 2 that you had, instead of that, maybe you just do something more efficiently, right? Like maybe if you do outreach, and you should always do active outreach in my opinion, maybe your message is better, maybe your response ratio is better. Like think about it like this: let's say you identify 100 people that you say they are good for this job, and you write a message to each of them. You write 100 messages. If your response rate is 30% or 10% or 50%, it has like downstream effects on your pipeline from an efficiency standpoint, where the volume that you produce and you need to churn through is the same, but because you do it way more efficiently and your pipeline is way more targeted, right? Maybe your reach out message is better, so more people respond to you. Maybe the positive response rate is better because your pipeline is more targeted. Maybe I don't know, maybe your assessment pass-through rate is higher because your pipeline is more targeted. So your assessment is sent to people who are actually able to do that. Maybe your pass-through rate from interview rates are better. So you need to interview less candidates. But be careful because you don't want to over-index, right? Like better efficiency is not equal or better by default, right? So maybe you are uncalibrated just because previously, I don't know, 10 out of 1 candidate was passed through, and now 9 out of 10 candidates are passed through as positive. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. Maybe you're over indexing on something. Maybe you're like badly calibrated and your initial pipeline ratios are better, like that you have better pass-through rates, but turns out that the final interview everybody is failing because your like previous steps were like uncalibrated. So think about efficiency in this way, that you make sure that you are looking and measuring and actioning the right stuff in the right way, not just like churning through volume hoping that something sticks. Because the bad thing about the second thing is that unfortunately it works, right? Unfortunately, brute force works. If you want to hire 10 people, you can send 100 messages or you can send 10,000. Both of them will work. But they will take very, very different effort, different time, and let's not forget different cost, right?
Yes.
Because if you start, even if you're not outsourcing this, you're not hiring somebody like me to, you know, build your hiring engine and build a flywheel, the talent flywheel that continuously spins and it's feeding your recruiting pipeline. Let's say that, you know, you're just doing this yourself. Put dollar signs on your time, right? Like look at your runway. And you are running towards the end of it, and what you spend your time with matters, right? Like you can maybe spend a week worth of work on hiring, or maybe it's just 1 hour a day. And you spend the other time on client calls, on customer
Everything else,
calls,
as we
on
said
everything,
earlier.
right? Like those hats, right? Like maybe you suddenly have time to wear more hats, or you don't need to wear this hat for this long, and you can switch to a different task. So when we say cost, like cost is not just necessarily at the outsourcing cost of paying somebody to do this. It's also operational cost, time cost, lost cost a lot of times. So
Yes.
it's, I know it's very material to put dollar signs on things, but it helps a lot when it's about context, right? Like, how much do you charge for your time as a consultant to speak to somebody? What's your hourly rate? Is it $100? Is it 200, 500, $1,000? If it's $1,000, each hour that you're not spending with billing those 1,000 hours,
It's costing you 1,000.
that's lost cost, right? So so yeah, think about those things when it's about efficiency.
That was
Did
great.
you have a question or a comment, Chandler?
No, I love hearing it back and like realizing that it actually works, you know, because like I worked with Adam for a while now and I've seen this work and it paid off because I found you, Clausion. So
Oh, that's good to hear. But I wanted to ask you, Chandler, to finish. Adam, if you have 1 or 2 minutes. And by the way, Guilherme, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. We've been chatting a lot, but please, if you have any question.
I'm just listening because that's a topic that always create problems hiring. So I like to listen, you know, to different perspectives. I hired over my career like more than 300 people, but there is always like very specifics to the company itself, because some companies you can do like as Adam mentioned, like a brute force and get a bunch of curriculums, but in some cases you have to pinpoint the right person. So, you know, I've been on both trends, like in different areas, but I agree 100% what you're saying. You know, it's a matter of designing your process and delivering it, which is not easy. It takes a lot of time.
And be critical. Be critical and realistic with yourself as well, because there is no, as you mentioned, like there is no perfect way of doing this. Sometimes, right, like there are maybe 10, 15 people in the world who are suitable for that job, and it's like executive recruiting, profiling, making sure that every edge is massaged out and everything is perfect, versus we like the biggest number that I heard in hiring one type of role in 1 year was 16,000 engineers in 6 months, right? Like that's volume, and with volume, a lot of times brute force is the way that we go, but it should not be, right? So I think knowing what you look for, knowing how it looks in reality. How does that person look like, right? Like, where did they work? Where do they sit? Where do they hang out? What do they do for fun? Like, you know, you can even apply the red ocean, blue ocean principles for like candidate pipelines, right? Like you can message somebody on LinkedIn and be the 15th person that day sending a hello first name, I hope this email finds you well type of garbage. Or you can, I don't know, DM them on Reddit or Instagram or Threads, or find their email and hyper personalize something that they had, maybe a keynote presentation on YouTube, and you use that, right? So understanding what you're looking for, how do they look like, understanding how will you know, right? Like how will you manage it? How will you actually process it through, like work-wise? And after
Yes.
that is just doing it. Right?
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much,
Just executing.
Adam. Thank you for the insights, and thank you for your generosity of participating today in the Compass session. As we said in the beginning, if we focus on startups, a lot of people are very good in developing the product that they're developing. But what about managing, hiring? It's all skills that people have. It's an expertise too. People overlook this expertise. And thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you, Guilherme, for being with us today. There was Nadia earlier too. And would you have a one final word just to wrap this up about one tip that you would give for the people listening to you today?
One tip,
Or a vision of the hiring processes that you wish you would see,
keep it
in the
real.
future. Yes.
Keep it
Thank you
real.
for that.
Start with the bad, right? Like start with the ugly and bad, because they will figure it out, right? And it's better to figure out. There is no good hire or bad hire. It's all about decisions. I think there is no such thing. People like to blame, oh, I made a bad hire. It's like, and that pushes responsibility away. It's like, no, it wasn't a bad hire. You made a bad decision. Own it. Keep it real.
Yes.